Hey everybody, it's Kat again. Um, and I've shouted out to all these guys before, but Game of Thrones Academy, Gil and Itamar, awesome guys, funny, keeps history alive. Civilization X actually has all the background of everything Westerosi Game of Thrones that you could potentially want. Uh, and then there's a bunch of other folks doing some breakdowns. I particularly like Rawrist because she's funny and a little snarky. And then there's Emergency Awesomeness. Uh, and I can tell you that he often catches these little nuances in the episodes that it's like, oh yeah, right, they were talking about that. So I'm just doing these quick videos because I wanted to fill in the gaps and or expand on some things that other people have probably already written about and talked about 1,000 times. And I just want to put mine out there because actually I've been going around to all these other folks' YouTube videos and writing what I considered sort of novels, and I thought, wow, that's really unfair to them. Um, and so if I really wanted to do it, I should just make my own damn videos. So here we are. So this video, we're going to talk about some continuing Nordic legends, some Norse myths. Can't talk. Norse myth and legends that Mr. Martin actually used in Game of Thrones to create his characters in different areas. So again, we're going to talk about the Wall and the others, but we're going to talk about this in reference to Ragnarok. So in the Game of Thrones, in this history, they talk about this time when it was the long night and the long winter. Okay, and that men were almost wiped off the planet. And there's the history of Game of Thrones in which they talk about the land of ET, where they had a similar experience, and other parts of the world in the Game of Thrones had similar, almost apocalyptic experiences. And so, dudes over at Game of Thrones Academy, Gil and Itamar, they talked about, the idea of Gilgamesh or Noah and Noah's Ark and the great flood that came, and that where all the different civilizations around our world today actually have similar stories. So a lot of people consider that, in fact, there must have been some great catastrophe that actually did happen and nearly wiped out a number of civilizations, and everybody recorded it. Anybody who actually did recorded history recorded it in some point. So, so this is one of the things that people think about in terms of the long night and the long winter. But one of the things that I thought was more likely, or I mean, added on to, so that apocalyptic thing that occurred with Noah's Ark, maybe with the Great Flood. But also, what came to mind was the story of Ragnarok. So in Norse mythology, Ragnarok is like the coming apocalypse, in a way. It actually translates to the twilight of the gods or the end of an age. And in Norse mythology, Ragnarok has happened a couple different times, just like in other actual faith or history or mythology around the world. This thing has happened before, and everybody expects that it's going to happen again. And in Norse mythology, the thing that occurred before Ragnarok was, number one, that Loki was let loose. So the god of mischief is let loose, and craziness is happening. And then a long winter comes, in which in the mythology, the Norse mythology, this long winter is 3 seasons or 3 years of winter without summer. And during this time, humongous natural catastrophes occur. There's earthquakes, and volcanoes are going off all over the place, and tsunamis wiping out civilizations because Jormungandr, the great serpent that circles the world, is writhing in the battle of the gods and causing all these things to happen. And some of the other stuff that's happening is, of course, brothers are fighting brothers. Renly and Stannis. Renly and Stannis in the Game of Thrones. So brothers fight brothers. Sisters, children defile kinship. I believe that would be Aegon the Conqueror and his two sisters, and Jaime and Cersei right now. Um, and it's a time, as it says, a time of axes and a time of swords. It's the time of the wolf. It's the time of the wolf. That that shields are riven, and a great war starts occurring between the gods in the Asgard and the other gods and lesser gods or people around the Nine Realms, and they all come to Midgard, that's Earth, where they're going to do battle. And some of these that are coming are in fact the frost giants out of Niflheim, the land of always winter. And they are going to fight against the gods, and who comes with them is Hell's army of dead. Loki jumps in the ship, the big ship that's anchored there, that's made from all the toenails and fingernails. I know, gross, right? Toenails and fingernails of the dead, and he puts all the already dead, the unheroic dead, on the ship, and he ferries them to Midgard, and they join the frost giants in a giant army. And as they're killing people, the frost giants are raising the dead to join their army, just like the whites or the White Walkers. The others, who are sort of the frost giants in the Game of Thrones, are raising the dead to join their army. And they have this gigantic clash with the gods. And other things that happen, speaking of Long Night, is that Fenrir the wolf gobbles up the sun and the moon, and so there's no light in Midgard. And eventually Fenrir also gobbles up Odin, by the way. And Thor, who, by the way, had a relationship with a giantess, possibly a frost giantess, and had two demigods. He also dies. Most of the gods die, so this is why it's called the Twilight of the Gods. And like the story of Noah's Ark and Gilgamesh, eternal war goes on until finally the waters rise and basically wipe out just about everybody except for two of every species, including two of the giants. And they all go back. The water finally recedes, and the two of everything recreates all the species on Earth, including the two giants. And I wanted to point that out because there's this big discussion about what's going to happen to the others if we have this big war and Azor Ahai comes, or whatever, winter comes, and they come down. What happens to the others? Now, Gil and Idvar say they believe that the others just disappear because they're like the magic, and so all the magic has to go. The wall has to go, the others have to go, etc. But if you're going with the Norse mythology of Ragnarok, in fact, they don't all go. And why is that? Well, because in Norse mythology, the twilight of the gods, the old gods die, and Thor's two children survive to create the next pantheon of gods. And humans survive, and they create more humans, etc. And the two giants survive, and they create giants. So essentially, what happens is it's the big circle. It happened, so Ragnarok comes, wipes everything out, and everything starts over again. That includes that man's final destruction, which has a lot of relationship to many other nations and ancient civilizations, legends and myths about, it's the yin and yang, that you can't have one without the other, that, man's final destruction will always, man's doom. If man exists, the doom of man must exist as well. So in my thoughts on what's going to happen with the others, is not that they won't all die. They won't all disappear. They can't. They can't because men still exist. And so I expect that some will survive, and they'll just turn back and they'll go back to the far reaches of the north. That even if there's no freaking wall there, there's going to be, you know, always this area that's the land of forever winter, like the Arctic Circle. And so yeah, they'll still exist. That's my thought. So even if the wall comes down, some kind of other one dude, two dudes, whatever, will ride away, even if they, even if the guys win. So there's a story about Ragnarok. It's the apocalypse, and in fact, that's the story of the long winter and the long night, and man almost coming to doom, but surviving in the end. And I forgot. So, and in the story of Ragnarok, there's Valhalla. Speaking of the Night's Watch, but Valhalla is where the heroic dead go, and they go and eat and they drink and they winch and they have eternal battles where they die and then come back alive again. Jon Snow. They come back to alive again to eat, drink, and winch and fight again, and all of this is in training for Ragnarok. And throughout the cycle of man's life, there are heroes like Thor, and different people that are designated by Odin and Frigg and other gods and demigods, whose job it is to go and fight off the little evil things that will cause the bad natural catastrophes to happen and to prevent Ragnarok from coming. So I think you kind of get that idea throughout the Game of Thrones story. Backing up to, there's volcanoes. So we have the volcanoes that wiped out Valyria, right? And then the tsunami. So obviously there once was a tsunami at one point that sunk the natural land bridge that the first men crossed in the first place, and then almost that created the marsh and where the chronic men are, etc., etc. Let's see. Any other parts that I'm missing? I think that's basically it. So this is the coming of Ragnarok, the long winter, and the long night. And stay tuned next time, because the next one I'm going to talk about how a couple other religious or based concepts and other civilizations' mythology kind of plays in these same stories or roles as that's being recorded in Games of Thrones. Thank you.